who were trained to do the duties that keep an organization or a society alive. There were no police officers, there were no judges, there were no teachers, there were no doctors. They had the infrastructure of hospitals and schools, but there was nobody trained to take those over when the Portuguese left. And colonial Africa is a study within itself. Lots of countries were in the same boat. But I can tell you that from the Packards' experience in adopting a child, when they went to the courts in the capital city to go through the legalities of getting this little girl home with them, the judges were wearing these white wigs, white dusty wigs from the Portuguese days, from the 70s. They were still wearing them because that's what judges wore. And they had these books that they would go through, and they were these giant dusty copies of legal law, and it was African Portuguese legal law. And they would go through them to try to figure out, well, what do we do if we want to let a foreigner adopt a Mozambican baby? And it took them volume after volume after volume to finally find the right page where there was the line that showed what exactly they needed to do to make sure that these people could take this baby. And I think that gives you a really good idea of what Mozambique is dealing with and a lot of what the developing world is dealing with. So, on a much lighter note, when I was both in Cameroon and also through my travels, I spent a lot of time by myself in awful hotel rooms, unable to sleep because I'm terrified that something is going to happen or I'm going to be bitten by one of those awful mosquitoes, laying there thinking about the things that I wish I had brought with me. What were some of those luxuries that I wish I had brought with me? And I have to tell you, Jackie Disbrow, when I went into the Peace Corps, sent me away with this fabulous Paul Mitchell, no need to wash your hair spray. It was like dry shampoo, and I babied that dry shampoo for 5 months. Those are the sorts of luxuries you don't think that you want until you get there and think, now wait a second, to take a shower, I have to go down to the river, I have to get a bucket, I have to let that water sit for 3 days so any of the parasites in it don't eat me. Then I have to boil the water, then I have to stand in another bucket and cup it over my head, one drop at a time. I can tell you when I got home, the first thing I did was took a hot, hot shower, singing at the top of my lungs, and then I sat down and took a hot bath, and then I started the whole thing all over again, because it was so fabulous to have hot water again. And the other thing that my mom reminded me of today is one of the first things I did the first time I came home from Africa was I laid down on the living room floor, because I had been living in dirt floors. And so you couldn't take your shoes off, and you certainly couldn't sit down. And just to lay down and watch TV, or just to lay down in general was such a luxury, which sounds so silly, but those are the sort of funny things that you miss that you don't realize you're going to miss. So I spent a lot of time thinking about Abena and what she would miss. If she's kidnapped by a Chandler businessman and brought to live in Chandler, what are some of the things that she would miss from a life of poverty when she's living in this great life of luxury, right? I'm trying to take the story and flip it on its head. So this is the last reading I'd like to share with you tonight. So this is Abena later in the story. She dried off after the warm shower, taking a moment to bury her face in the sweet-smelling towel before hanging it over the glass shower door to dry. There were some luxuries in this American life she couldn't help but love. She'd never be complacent to the joy of hot water, soft towels, or a fluffy pillow. She'd spent countless nights mentally packing one of the suitcases in the downstairs closet. There'd be bars of soap and Rocio's oatmeal cookies for her. She'd steal spices and those great blue plastic spatulas from the fancy kitchen store that Rocio loved so much. She'd wrap these in one of Cynthia's silky perfumed robes for her mother. She was sure Mika had never felt silk. Not that she deserved to feel silk. She'd take the towels, pillows, and coloring books for Cupella, along with one of those giant boxes of 100 crayons she'd been given when she arrived as an infantile distraction to her sorrow. She could see Cupella propped up with his tiny black elbows, resting on the cream pillowcase, coloring patiently. She wished she could take more practical items home too, ones that would make her life and the lives of others in the village so much easier. She'd love to bring a bathtub and laughed at the thought of running water. What would the children do all day if they didn't have to fetch water? And oh, the hospitals. She'd seen more than one of the giant sanitary buildings near the Harringtons' home. She'd never seen a medical center before that didn't signal its services to passerbys by the long, never-ending queue of frail and dying winding out its doors. For Cupella, more than anything, she wished she could bring home the pool. He'd hated water since his near drowning, but she knew a couple days in the Arizona summer sun, she'd have him swimming like a fish, as Rocio would say. She'd love the sensation of jumping into a cool pool and sinking to the bottom where the colder water lies, only to emerge in the blazing hot sun. She could imagine his big eyes under the water and hear his laugh as he watched his bubbles float to the surface. She could see him jumping on one foot, trying to shake the water from his ears. Thinking of her brother, she smiled. I will see him again, she reassured her mirrored image. So like I said, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do up here. I think I've covered all the bases. I'm very thankful for all of you. I have never in my life had so many people I love in one room, and so it's just a delight. So I suppose now I'm supposed to open it up to questions. Anybody have any questions? Has anybody read this book? Oh, Amanda has. Once or twice. Okay. Madison.
How long did it take for you to write it?
Okay, so it took 3 years, and then I sent it away to an agent who volunteered to edit it for me, and he sent it back and said that there was a main character that was unnecessary, so I had to pick the whole thing apart and piece it back together without that main character. And the previous ending, he wasn't too fond of either, so I had to give it a different ending. So that took another year, and then it took about a year and a half of sending out letters to publishing agencies and getting lots and lots of denials before I finally decided to send it out and publish it myself. So the whole process was about 8 years. Yes?
Did your agent suggest things that you said, hell no, I'm not going to change that?
There were a couple things. He actually said, his first thing was, is this a memoir? Is this a true story? And I was like, no. And he goes, are you sure this isn't a true story? I was like, pretty sure. I can't imagine, like, yeah, no. So, although I'd probably be on Oprah if it was a true story, right? Kim.
So you're writing a second one. Do you know about when we should expect that?
Much sooner than 8 years, hopefully. My second novel is called Basket Baby, and it's based in Bolivia. It also is, thanks to Esperanza for sure, because one of our projects was there as well. And my first draft should be done in October. Andrea.
Who's your favorite author?
Oh, my favorite author is Barbara Kingsolver, who I heap tons of praise on in this book. Yeah, I adore her. And actually, it was so funny because they say write what you know, right? Well, this book is kind of a mirror. I mean, I'm not going to, there's a lot of my own story in here in one way or another. And I really thought, because so much of my life has just kind of fallen into place so happily, that I would just send this off to Barbara Kingsolver's agent, and away I would be swept to the publishing world. And I got a rejection, and then I got another rejection, and then I wrote her back, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is not the way my life works. You were supposed to read this one more time. And she was like, please stop writing me. Someday. Yes, Duda. How did I come about them? Abena is a name that's traditionally given to, so Abena is from a specific tribe in Mozambique. Their people speak Sena. It's spelled M-S-E-N-A in the book, but the M is silent. And Abena is a name given to girls born on a Tuesday.